The Cardassian spacecraft materializes in Earth's orbit, its sleek form casting an ominous shadow over the planet below. Panic erupts across the globe as military forces mobilize, missiles primed, and fighter jets scrambling. Amidst the chaos, a message crackles through Earth's communication channels. People of Earth, we come in peace. We seek permission to land for a cultural exchange mission focused on studying human reproduction. World leaders convene in emergency sessions, debating the aliens' intentions. After hours of tense negotiations, they reluctantly agree to allow 2 Cardassian representatives to land in Washington, D.C. under heavy security. The alien vessel descends, touching down on the National Mall. A hush falls over the gathered crowd as the ship's hatch opens with a hiss. 2 figures emerge, clad in sleek environmental suits. They introduce themselves as Gul Dukat and Daphne, a married couple from Cardassia Prime. Our species faces a fertility crisis, Gul Dukat explains, his voice distorted through his helmet speaker. We seek to learn from Earth's biodiversity to ensure our survival. Jerry Russell, a 35-year-old bachelor and biology professor specializing in human reproduction, watches the broadcast from his university office. His phone rings. It's a government official, urgently requesting his presence in D.C. Within hours, Jerry finds himself face-to-face with the aliens, thrust into the role of primary liaison and instructor. During the initial meeting, Daphne removes her helmet, revealing strikingly human-like features. Jerry's breath catches in his throat, captivated by her alien beauty. Gul Dukat remains fully suited, citing health concerns. We request to observe human mating rituals firsthand, Daphne states, her words sending shockwaves through the room. Controversy erupts worldwide. Religious groups protest the aliens' presence, while others fear a plot to gather intelligence on human weaknesses. Jerry grapples with his growing attraction to Daphne and his unease about potentially compromising Earth's security. As preparations begin for the Cardassians' research, competing nations demand access to the aliens and their technology. Global stability hangs by a thread. Jerry receives orders to proceed with the mating demonstrations despite his reservations, placing him in a morally complex situation that could impact humanity's future. Meanwhile, high above Earth, NASA detects unusual energy readings from the Cardassian ship in orbit. Analysts whisper that it may be more than a simple transport vessel. As Jerry prepares for his first lesson with the aliens, he can't shake the feeling that he's caught in the middle of something far larger than a mere cultural exchange. The fate of 2 species now rests in his hands, along with the potential for interstellar conflict or cooperation. Jerry takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what lies ahead. The journey to understand human mating has only just begun, and its consequences will ripple across the stars. Jerry's office buzzed with activity as he pored over dossiers of potential volunteers for the mating demonstrations. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him, each candidate's file a reminder of the unprecedented nature of this endeavor. He rubbed his temples, trying to focus on the task at hand. A knock at the door startled him from his concentration. "Come in," he called, expecting another government official with more questions or demands. Instead, Daphne glided into the room, her alien features softened by a look of genuine curiosity. "Professor Russell, I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly lilt. Jerry stood, suddenly aware of his rumpled appearance. "Not at all, Daphne. What can I do for you?" She moved closer, her eyes scanning the cluttered desk. "I was hoping we could discuss human courtship rituals in more detail. Your species' approach to pair bonding is fascinating." As they talked, Jerry found himself increasingly drawn to Daphne's intelligence and inquisitiveness. Her questions about human relationships were probing yet respectful, and he couldn't shake the feeling that her interest extended beyond mere scientific inquiry. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Jerry peered through the blinds to see a group of protesters gathering at the facility's gates, their signs denouncing the alien presence on Earth. Daphne joined him at the window, her expression troubled. "Your people seem divided on our presence here," she observed. Jerry sighed. "It's a complex situation. Many are excited about the potential for interstellar cooperation, but others fear the unknown." As if on cue, his phone buzzed with a news alert. The ticker at the bottom of the screen announced an emergency United Nations session to address the Cardassian situation. Later that evening, Jerry found himself in a classified briefing with military intelligence. The dimly lit room felt suffocating as he absorbed the implications of the latest findings. "The energy readings from their ship have intensified," a stern-faced general explained, pointing to a series of charts. "We can't rule out the possibility of advanced weaponry." Jerry's mind raced, recalling his interactions with the Cardassians. Had he missed any signs of duplicity? He thought of Daphne's seeming openness and Gul Dukat's persistent aloofness. As he left the briefing, his phone rang. It was Sarah, one of the human volunteers. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Dr. Russell, I need to talk to you about Gul Dukat," she said. "His questions, they're becoming increasingly invasive. I'm not comfortable with this anymore." Jerry assured her he would address the issue, his unease growing. He needed answers, and he needed them soon. The next morning, Jerry arrived at the facility to find Daphne waiting for him. Her usual poise was replaced by an air of nervous energy. "Professor Russell," she began, her voice low, "I have a proposal that may aid our research significantly." Jerry listened, his eyebrows rising as Daphne suggested they engage in intimate relations themselves, rather than relying solely on volunteers. His mind whirled with the ethical implications, professional boundaries blurring before his eyes. I'll need time to consider this, Daphne," he managed, his voice strained. Before he could fully process the proposal, an urgent message from NASA demanded his attention. The revelation of hidden stasis pods on the Cardassian ship sent a chill down his spine. Jerry stood in his office, the weight of multiple revelations bearing down on him. The first mating demonstration was less than 2 days away. Global protests were intensifying. Suspicions about the Cardassians' true intentions were mounting. He stared at his reflection in the window, barely recognizing the man looking back at him. In that moment, Jerry realized that his next decision could alter the course of human history and interstellar relations forever. His phone buzzed again, a reminder that time was running out. Jerry took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. Whatever path he chose, there was no turning back now. Jerry's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor as the implications of the latest news sank in. The discovery of stasis pods on the Cardassian ship had shattered any remaining illusions of a simple cultural exchange. Before he could fully process this development, alarms blared throughout the facility. Armed guards burst into his office, their faces grim. "Dr. Russell, you need to come with us immediately," one of them barked, gesturing towards the door with his weapon. Heart racing, Jerry allowed himself to be escorted through the corridors. The facility had transformed into a hive of frantic activity, with personnel rushing in all directions. He caught glimpses of other guards leading Daphne and Gul Dukat away, their alien features now tinged with unmistakable concern. Hours passed in a blur of interrogations and security briefings. Jerry found himself sequestered in a small windowless room, trying to make sense of the rapidly unfolding events. The once cordial atmosphere had given way to an air of suspicion and terrifying hostility. As night fell, a junior officer appeared at Jerry's door. "Dr. Russell, you have a visitor," he announced, stepping aside to reveal Daphne. She entered the room, her usual grace replaced by a nervous energy. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, leaving them alone. "Jerry," Daphne began, her voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." He leaned forward, bracing himself for whatever revelation was coming. "I'm not who you think I am," she continued, her eyes searching his face. "I'm not Gul Dukat's wife. I was created for this mission." Jerry's mind reeled as Daphne explained her true nature, a genetically engineered being designed to study and potentially mate with humans. The implications of her words sent shockwaves through his already fragile understanding of the situation. "Our species is dying, Jerry," Daphne said, her voice cracking with emotion. "This mission, it's our last hope for survival." Before Jerry could fully process this information, the door burst open. A stern-faced military official strode in, flanked by armed guards. "Dr. Russell, we need you in the command center immediately," he announced. "There's been a development with the Cardassian ship." As they hurried through the facility, Jerry's mind raced. The revelation about Daphne had thrown everything into question. He glanced at her, walking beside him under heavy guard, and felt a confusing mix of attraction, betrayal, and concern. In the command center, a flurry of activity greeted them. Screens displayed real-time footage of the Cardassian ship, surrounded by Earth's military satellites. A team of scientists huddled around a bank of computers, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of monitors. "We've detected multiple life signs in those stasis pods," a researcher explained, pointing to a complex array of data. "All female, all genetically similar to her." He nodded towards Daphne, who stood silently, her alien features unreadable. The room erupted into chaos as the implications sank in. Jerry overheard snippets of frantic conversations, talks of invasion, genetic manipulation, and the potential threat to humanity's very existence. Amidst the commotion, Gul Dukat was brought into the room. To everyone's shock, he began removing his environmental suit. Jerry watched, transfixed, as the alien revealed himself to be something entirely unexpected. A hybrid, half Cardassian and half human. "I am the result of a previous attempt," Gul Dukat explained, his voice carrying a strange mix of human and alien inflections. "A prototype, if you will. Our mission here is to create a new generation that can thrive on Earth and save both our species." The revelation sent shockwaves through the facility and beyond. Within hours, the news had leaked to the public. Jerry watched on monitors as protests erupted across the globe. Cities burned as factions clashed, those who saw the potential for a mutually beneficial alliance, and those who feared it as the first step in a slow invasion. In the midst of this global chaos, Jerry found himself face-to-face with the President of the United States via secure video link. The leader's face was etched with the weight of the decision before them. "Dr. Russell," the President began, her voice grave, "we're at a crossroads. The world's leaders have come to a consensus. We need you to make a choice that could determine the future of both our species." Jerry listened, his heart pounding, as the President laid out the ultimatum. He could agree to father a child with Daphne as part of a controlled experiment, or face the possibility of global conflict as nations fought over Cardassian technology and genetic material. Before he could respond, alarms blared once again. Security feeds showed a group of armed extremists breaching the facility's outer defenses. Leading them was a familiar face, Sarah, the volunteer who had expressed discomfort with Gul Dukat's questioning. "They're after Daphne," a security officer shouted over the din. "They want to expose her to the world." Jerry's training and instincts took over. Despite his lingering doubts and the weight of the President's ultimatum, he knew he had to act. He raced through the corridors, dodging panicked personnel and debris from the extremists' explosive entry. He found Daphne cornered in a laboratory, her alien features contorted with fear as Sarah and her group advanced. Without thinking, Jerry placed himself between them. "Stop!" he shouted, arms outstretched. "This isn't the way!" Sarah's eyes blazed with a mixture of fear and perseverance. "You don't understand, Dr. Russell. They're here to replace us." As Jerry tried to reason with the group, the facility shook with a massive tremor. Emergency lights flashed, bathing the scene in an eerie red glow. "Sir," a voice crackled over the intercom. "The Cardassian ship, it's powering up." Jerry's gaze met Daphne's, a moment of understanding passing between them. Whatever came next would change everything. The fate of two species now hung in the balance, with Jerry caught in the middle of a cosmic crossroads. Jerry's eyes locked with Daphne's, a silent understanding passing between them. In that moment, he made his choice. "This way," Jerry shouted, grabbing Daphne's hand and pulling her away from the advancing group led by Sarah. They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of their pursuers' footsteps echoing behind them. Alarms blared overhead as they navigated the maze-like facility. Jerry's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He glanced back at Daphne, her alien features set in persistence as she kept pace with him. They rounded a corner, narrowly avoiding a clash between security forces and protesters. The air was thick with tension and the acrid smell of smoke from small fires that had broken out during the chaos. "There!" Jerry spotted a reinforced door at the end of the hallway. He punched in his access code with trembling fingers, praying it would still work amidst the lockdown. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit stairwell. Jerry and Daphne descended rapidly, the sounds of conflict growing fainter above them. At the bottom, they found themselves in front of another heavy door. Jerry recognized it immediately, the entrance to the facility's emergency bunker. He placed his hand on the biometric scanner, and the door slid open with a pneumatic whoosh. They stumbled inside, gasping for breath. As the door sealed shut behind them, cutting off the chaos above, Jerry's eyes widened in surprise. Gul Dukat stood before them, his hybrid features illuminated by the bunker's soft lighting. "I had a feeling you'd make it here," Gul Dukat said, his voice a strange blend of human and alien tones. Before Jerry could respond, Gul Dukat moved to a control panel on the far wall. With practiced ease, he revealed a hidden compartment containing an alien device. "What is that?" Jerry asked, moving closer. "A direct link to our ship," Gul Dukat explained, activating the device. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing the face of a male Cardassian. His reptilian features were etched with concern. "Garrick," Gul Dukat addressed the Cardassian captain. "What's the situation up there?" Garrick's voice filled the bunker, tinged with static. The energy spike was defensive, activated when Earth's military mobilized. "We're holding position, but if this escalates further, the High Command will initiate a rescue operation." Jerry's stomach dropped at the implications. "That could lead to interstellar war," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Garrick's eyes shifted to Jerry. "Indeed, Dr. Russell, we need a resolution, and quickly." Jerry's mind raced, weighing options and potential outcomes. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Risky, controversial, but potentially their best chance at averting disaster. "I have a proposal," Jerry said, his voice gaining strength. He looked at Daphne, then back at the holographic display. "Daphne and I will publicly announce our intention to mate and produce a hybrid child. It could demonstrate the potential for peaceful coexistence between our species." Daphne's eyes widened, but she nodded in agreement. Gul Dukat studied Jerry intently before turning to Garrick. "It could work," Gul Dukat said. "A voluntary union might calm some of the fears on both sides." Garrick considered for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed. We'll monitor the situation from here and provide support if needed." As the holographic display winked out, Jerry turned to Daphne. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. Daphne took his hand, her alien skin cool against his. "It's our best chance for peace," she replied. With renewed drive, Jerry led the way back to the bunker's entrance. As they prepared to face the world above, Gul Dukat's voice stopped them. "Whatever happens next," he said, "know that you're making history." Jerry nodded, then opened the door. They ascended the stairs, emerging into a facility transformed by conflict. Security personnel rushed past, barely sparing them a glance in the chaos. As they made their way towards the main entrance, Jerry's comlink buzzed. He answered to find a frantic technician on the other end. "Dr. Russell, the U.S. military, they're attempting to seize the Cardassian ship." Jerry's blood ran cold. He quickened his pace, Daphne matching his stride. They burst through the main doors into a sea of protesters and media cameras. Flashbulbs popped, and a cacophony of shouts filled the air. Taking a deep breath, Jerry raised his hands for silence. As the crowd's roar subsided, he spoke, his voice carrying across the tense gathering. "People of Earth," he began, acutely aware of the weight of his words, "I come before you with an unprecedented announcement. In the interest of peace and mutual understanding between our species, Daphne and I have agreed to mate and produce a human Cardassian hybrid child." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by an eruption of voices, some cheering, others shouting in anger. Jerry pressed on, his hand firmly grasping Daphne's. "This is a voluntary decision, made in the hope of fostering cooperation and averting conflict. We believe that through this union, we can prove that our species are not so different after all." As Jerry continued to speak, outlining their intentions and appealing for calm, he noticed a commotion at the edge of the crowd. A woman with a determined expression pushed her way forward, flanked by a team of scientists. Jerry's heart sank as he recognized her. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a prominent geneticist. Her face was grim as she approached the podium, a data pad clutched in her hand. "Dr. Russell," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "There's something you need to know about your plan, something that changes everything." Jerry braced himself, sensing that the path forward was about to become even more complicated. As Dr. Rodriguez began to speak, he realized that the true challenge of uniting two species was only just beginning. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos, her words sending a ripple of tension through the crowd. "The genetic compatibility issues are more complex than we initially thought," she explained, her eyes darting between Jerry and Daphne. "A direct mating attempt could have unforeseen consequences." Jerry's mind raced, processing the implications of this new information. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, threatening to erupt into panic. He glanced at Daphne, her alien features etched with concern, then back at the sea of faces before him. In that moment, Jerry made a decision that would alter the course of human-Cardassian relations. He stepped forward, raising his hands to quiet the crowd once more. "I propose a compromise," he announced, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "A controlled scientific experiment to create a human-Cardassian hybrid under the supervision of an international team of experts. This approach will address the genetic compatibility issues while ensuring transparency and shared knowledge." The crowd fell silent, processing Jerry's proposal. Dr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly, while Daphne squeezed Jerry's hand in support. Within hours, Jerry's proposal had reached the highest levels of government. The United Nations convened an emergency session to discuss the matter. For days, heated debates raged as world leaders grappled with the implications of Jerry's plan. Finally, a resolution was passed. The International Hybrid Research Initiative, IHRI, would be established on a neutral island in the Pacific Ocean. Representatives from major world powers in the Cardassian High Command would oversee the project. Construction of the IHRI facility began immediately. Cardassian technology accelerated the process, and within weeks, a state-of-the-art research center emerged from the island's lush landscape. Its gleaming white structures housed cutting-edge genetic laboratories and medical facilities. As a gesture of good faith, the Cardassians agreed to share some of their non-military technology. This olive branch eased tensions among Earth's nations, fostering a cautious optimism about the future of human-Cardassian relations. Jerry and Daphne voluntarily entered the facility as the primary subjects of the hybrid experiment. As they stood at the entrance, Jerry turned to Daphne, taking in her alien features that had become so familiar to him. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly. Daphne's gaze met his, her eyes reflecting a mix of willpower and vulnerability. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. "We're making history, Jerry, for both our peoples." They were greeted by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who would lead the human scientific team. Beside her stood Dr. Kelak, a Cardassian geneticist with expertise in his species biology. The two scientists exchanged a look of professional respect before turning to their subjects. "We'll begin with a series of comprehensive genetic tests," Dr. Rodriguez explained, gesturing towards the lab. "From there, we'll develop a plan for potential genetic modifications to increase compatibility." As they made their way through the facility, Jerry was surprised to see a familiar face. Sarah, the former extremist leader, stood in one of the labs poring over a datapad. Noticing his questioning look, Dr. Kelak explained, "Ms. Sarah has agreed to share her knowledge of alleged previous human-alien hybrid programs. In exchange, she's been granted immunity and a role in the project." Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting Jerry's. There was a flicker of something, regret perhaps, before she nodded curtly and returned to her work. The following weeks were a whirlwind of tests, procedures, and genetic modifications. Jerry and Daphne underwent extensive examinations, their bodies and genes scrutinized in ways they had never imagined. The process was physically and emotionally taxing, bringing them closer together as they faced each challenge side by side. Their growing bond became a symbol of hope for human-Cardassian cooperation. Millions around the world followed the publicized aspects of the experiment, captivated by the potential of this unprecedented union. Meanwhile, Gul Dukat worked tirelessly with Earth's military leaders to establish protocols for future interactions between humans and Cardassians. His unique perspective as a hybrid proved invaluable, but it also made him a target for suspicion from both sides. Jerry often saw the strain on Gul Dukat's face as he navigated the precarious political landscape. One evening, as Jerry and Daphne rested in their quarters after a particularly grueling day of tests, an alert sounded throughout the facility. They rushed to the main lab to find Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kalak huddled around a console, their faces etched with concern. "What's happening?" Jerry asked, his heart racing. Dr. Kalak looked up, his reptilian features taut with tension. "We've detected a series of unexplained equipment malfunctions in the secure wing where the Cardassian females' stasis pods are kept." "Sabotage?" Daphne suggested, her voice low. Dr. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "It's possible. We're launching a joint human Cardassian investigation immediately." As security personnel swarmed the facility, Jerry couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The date for their first attempted conception was approaching rapidly, and now this potential threat loomed over everything they had worked for. Daphne placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. "Whatever comes next," she said, her eyes meeting his, "we'll face it together." Jerry nodded, drawing strength from her presence. As alarms continued to blare and personnel rushed past them, he knew that the true test of their experiment, and of human Cardassian relations, was only beginning. As alarms continued to blare and personnel rushed past them, Jerry knew that the true test of their experiment, and of human Cardassian relations, was only just beginning. Without warning, the facility shook violently. Emergency lights flashed, bathing the corridors in an eerie red glow. Jerry and Daphne exchanged a quick glance before springing into action. They raced towards the stasis pod wing, their footsteps echoing in the chaos-filled hallways. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Dr. Kalak joined them, their faces etched with concern. As they reached the secure wing, the sight that greeted them sent a chill down Jerry's spine. Several stasis pods lay open, their occupants missing. "How is this possible?" Daphne whispered, her eyes scanning the room. Dr. Kalak rushed to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls. "The security footage," he said, his voice tight. "We need to see what happened." The group huddled around the screen as Dr. Kalak pulled up the recent footage. Jerry's breath caught in his throat as a familiar figure appeared on the screen. "Sarah?" he said, disbelief coloring his voice. They watched in stunned silence as Sarah, the former extremist leader, methodically released the Cardassian females from their stasis pods. Her movements were practiced, efficient, nothing like the erratic behavior of a fanatic. "She's been playing us all along," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's a Cardassian agent." Jerry's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "We need to find them," he said, already moving towards the exit. They couldn't have gotten far. The group split up, coordinating with security teams to search the facility. Jerry and Daphne took the lower levels, their senses on high alert. As they rounded a corner, Jerry noticed a faint draft coming from behind a storage unit. "Daphne," he called softly, gesturing to the unit. Together they pushed it aside, revealing a hidden tunnel entrance. "They must have used this to escape," Daphne said, peering into the darkness. Without hesitation, they entered the tunnel, following its winding path. The air grew cooler and saltier as they progressed. Eventually, they emerged into a secluded cove, the sound of waves lapping against the shore filling the air. In the distance, they saw a sleek Cardassian shuttle, its engines humming to life. Sarah stood at the entrance, ushering the escaped Cardassian females inside. Jerry and Daphne crouched behind a rocky outcropping, assessing the situation. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy as a transport beam materialized nearby. Gul Dukat appeared, flanked by a mixed team of human and Cardassian security forces. "Stand down, Sarah," Gul Dukat called out, his voice carrying across the cove. "Your mission is over." Sarah's face contorted with anger. "You're a traitor to your own people, Dukat," she spat. "This hybrid abomination will be the death of our species." Jerry watched as Gul Dukat's expression hardened. "I suspected your true identity," he said, but I allowed you to continue your charade to expose the full extent of the conspiracy within our government. As the standoff intensified, Jerry made a split-second decision. He stood up, hands raised, and walked towards the shuttle. Daphne hissed his name, but he pressed on. "Wait," Jerry called out, addressing the Cardassian females. "Please, hear me out before you leave." Sarah raised a weapon, but one of the Cardassian females placed a hand on her arm, lowering it. Jerry took a deep breath and continued. "I know you're scared," he said, his voice steady, "but what we're doing here isn't just about creating hybrids. It's about ensuring the survival of both our species. It's about proving that we can coexist peacefully, that we're stronger together than we are apart." He saw doubt flicker across some of the Cardassians' faces. Encouraged, he pressed on, explaining the potential benefits of the hybrid program and the progress they'd already made. As Jerry spoke, he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. Daphne had silently made her way to the shuttle's entrance. In a blur of motion, she leapt aboard, engaging Sarah in hand-to-hand combat. The two grappled fiercely, Daphne's Cardassian combat training evident in her fluid movements. With a final, decisive strike, Daphne subdued Sarah. The remaining Cardassian females, moved by Jerry's words and Daphne's loyalty, agreed to return to the facility voluntarily. As Gul Dukat's security team secured Sarah and escorted the Cardassian females back to the facility, Jerry felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. Daphne approached, a small smile on her face. "That was quite the speech," she said, taking his hand. Jerry squeezed her hand in return. "I meant every word," he replied. Back at the facility, the aftermath of the escape attempt brought unexpected developments. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kalak discovered that the stress of the incident had triggered dormant genetic markers in both Jerry and Daphne. "This could significantly increase your compatibility for hybrid conception," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her eyes bright with excitement. As the scientific team worked to incorporate this new information into their genetic modification protocol, Jerry and Daphne prepared for another attempt at conception. The world's attention once again focused on the IHRI facility, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Jerry and Daphne entered the specially designed biocontainment suite, the weight of expectation heavy on their shoulders. As the intricate conception process began, monitored closely by the scientific team, Jerry allowed himself a moment of hope. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Kalak burst into the observation room, his face pale. "We're detecting a massive energy surge from the Cardassian ship in orbit," he said, his voice strained. "It's interfering with our equipment." Jerry felt the floor vibrate beneath him as the energy surge intensified. He looked at Daphne, her eyes wide with concern. As the scientists scrambled to stabilize the delicate equipment, Jerry realized that the next few hours would determine not just the success of their experiment, but the future of human-Cardassian relations itself. The facility shuddered as the energy surge intensified, causing the delicate equipment in the biocontainment suite to flicker and spark. Jerry and Daphne exchanged worried glances, their bodies already primed for the conception process. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're losing stability. Jerry, Daphne, stay calm. We're working on a solution." Outside the suite, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kalak scrambled to salvage the situation. Their hands flew over consoles, eyes darting between readouts in the viewing window where Jerry and Daphne lay. "We need to shield them from this radiation," Dr. Kalak hissed, his scales glistening with sweat. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her mind racing. "What if we combine our shield technologies, human EMF barriers with Cardassian quantum shielding?" They worked feverishly, jury-rigging a makeshift electromagnetic shield using components from both human and Cardassian equipment. As they activated the hybrid shield, a shimmering field enveloped the biocontainment suite. Inside, Jerry felt a tingling sensation wash over his skin. He reached out, grasping Daphne's hand. "Are you okay?" Daphne nodded, her eyes wide. "I feel different, like every cell in my body is buzzing." Unbeknownst to them, the energy surge from the Cardassian ship was catalyzing unexpected changes in their bodies. Jerry's senses sharpened, the scent of Daphne's skin suddenly intoxicating. Daphne gasped as she felt her reproductive system shifting, becoming more receptive to human DNA. Meanwhile, Gul Dukat led a team to investigate the source of the energy surge. They transported aboard the Cardassian ship in orbit, phasers at the ready. As they moved through the corridors, they encountered a group of Cardassian scientists huddled around a pulsing device. "Stand down," Gul Dukat ordered, his voice echoing in the chamber. The lead scientist turned, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You don't understand, Dukat. This device will ensure the success of the hybrid program. We're saving our species." Gul Dukat's eyes narrowed. "By risking everything we've worked for, you've endangered the entire project." As tensions escalated on the ship, the situation at the IHRI facility grew more complex. Dr. Rodriguez stared at her monitors in disbelief. "This is impossible," she muttered. Dr. Kelak leaned in, his breath catching. "The quantum field, it's accelerating the genetic recombination process exponentially." Inside the suite, Jerry and Daphne's bodies began to glow with a soft, pulsating light. Strange patterns danced across their skin, reminiscent of both human veins and Cardassian scales. "Elena," Dr. Kelak said, his voice tight, "we need to make a decision. Do we continue or abort?" Before Dr. Rodriguez could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. General Frank Thompson's voice boomed over the speakers. "Attention all personnel. We have detected an unidentified alien vessel entering Earth's orbit. This is not a drill. Prepare for potential first contact scenarios." The control room erupted into chaos. Dr. Rodriguez turned to her team, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "We proceed. Whatever's happening in there, it might be our only chance to make this work." On the Cardassian ship, Gul Dukat's team had secured the rogue scientists and were assessing the experimental device. Sarah, now working under close supervision, examined the controls. "It's linked directly to the ship's power core," she explained. "Shutting it down could cause a cascade failure." Suddenly, a transmission cut through their communications. An alien voice, unlike anything they had ever heard, resonated in their minds rather than their ears. "People of Earth and Cardassia," it said, "we have observed your attempts at cooperation with great interest. The experiment you conduct may determine the future of this sector of the galaxy." Back in the biocontainment suite, Jerry and Daphne found themselves immersed in a sea of shared consciousness. Memories, thoughts, and feelings flowed between them and beyond, touching every human and Cardassian within the expanding quantum field. Jerry gasped as he experienced flashes of Cardassian history, feeling the weight of their struggles and triumphs. Daphne's eyes filled with tears as she witnessed the breadth of human culture and emotion. "Jerry," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I can feel everyone. It's beautiful." Outside the facility, world leaders scrambled to respond to the alien presence. Inside, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kelak watched in amazement as the quantum field expanded, enveloping the entire building. As the boarding team on the Cardassian ship stood poised to make their decision about the experimental device, the fate of two species hung in the balance. The unknown aliens watched silently from above, waiting to see if humanity and Cardassia could overcome their differences and usher in a new era of interstellar cooperation. In the heart of the IHRI facility, Jerry and Daphne lay at the center of a miracle. Their bodies and minds merged in ways that defied scientific understanding. The next few moments would determine not just the success of their experiment, but the future of human-Cardassian relations, and potentially the course of galactic history. History. The quantum field's intensity reached its zenith, enveloping not only the IHRI facility, but extending its influence to the Cardassian ship in orbit and beyond. Aboard the Cardassian vessel, Gul Dukat and his team stood frozen, their fingers hovering over the controls of the experimental device. Suddenly, a wave of energy washed over them, and their minds expanded beyond the confines of their bodies. Sarah gasped, her eyes widening, as she experienced a flood of sensations and memories not her own. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Gul Dukat's response died on his lips as he found himself immersed in a sea of shared consciousness. He saw flashes of Earth's history, felt the warmth of human emotions, and understood the depth of Cardassian culture in ways he never had before. The rogue Cardassian scientists, who moments ago had been prepared to risk everything for their cause, now stood slack-jawed as waves of empathy and understanding washed over them. The lead scientist, his hands shaking, reached out towards the device. We didn't know," he murmured, tears forming in his eyes. "The consequences, the beauty of what we could achieve together." In that moment of clarity, the scientists collectively made their decision. With trembling fingers, they deactivated the experimental device, its pulsing energy fading to a dim glow. As the quantum field reached its peak, it extended beyond the Cardassian ship, touching the hull of an undetected vessel hovering just beyond Earth's orbit. Inside, beings of an unknown species experienced the same rush of shared consciousness. Back in the biocontainment suite, Jerry and Daphne's bodies radiated an intense, pulsating light. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kalak shielded their eyes, their instruments going haywire from the unprecedented energy readings. "Elena," Dr. Kalak called out, his voice strained. "Look at the genetic markers." Dr. Rodriguez squinted at the readouts, her jaw dropping in astonishment. It's working, but there's something else, something I've never seen before." As the light began to fade, Jerry and Daphne's bodies slowly relaxed. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to examine them, her hands flying over various medical instruments. "They're stable," she announced, relief evident in her voice. "But there's more. Daphne, she's pregnant, with twins." Dr. Kalak leaned in, his eyes widening as he studied the scans. "These embryos, they're not just human Cardassian hybrids. There's a third genetic signature here, something entirely new." Before they could process this revelation, a voice resonated in their minds, not heard but felt. It carried an air of ancient wisdom and gentle curiosity. "People of Earth and Cardassia," the voice said, "we are the Zorans. We have watched your species with great interest, and now at last you have proven yourselves ready." General Thompson burst into the room, his face a mix of confusion and awe. "We're detecting a new ship entering orbit. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Outside the facility, the sky shimmered as a sleek, otherworldly vessel descended. Its surface seemed to ripple like water, reflecting the sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. As Jerry and Daphne regained consciousness, they found themselves filled with a profound sense of connection, not just to each other, but to the twins growing within Daphne's womb. "Jerry," Daphne whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can feel them. Our children, they're extraordinary." Jerry nodded, tears forming in his eyes as he placed a hand on Daphne's abdomen. "I feel it too. It's like they're a bridge between worlds." The facility buzzed with activity as diplomats and leaders from Earth and Cardassia converged, all drawn by the momentous events unfolding. As they gathered in the main atrium, a beam of light shimmered from the Zoran ship, materializing into 3 tall, ethereal beings. The Zorans' appearance was striking. Their bodies seemed to shift between solid and translucent states, with patterns of light dancing across their skin. Their eyes, deep pools of swirling colors, conveyed emotions and thoughts without the need for words. The lead Zoran stepped forward, its gaze sweeping across the assembled humans and Cardassians. When it spoke, its voice resonated in the minds of all present. "For millennia, we have guided the evolution of species across the galaxy, waiting for the moment when they would be ready to join our community. Your hybrid program, born from the union of 2 former enemies, was the final test. You have exceeded our expectations." As the implications of the Zoran's words sank in, a sense of awe and excitement rippled through the crowd. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "You mean there's a whole galactic community out there, and we're being invited to join?" The Zoran nodded, a gesture both familiar and alien. "Indeed, your ability to overcome your differences and create new life together has proven your worthiness. The children born of this union will be the first of a new generation, one that will bridge the gap between all our species." Gul Dukat, who had been transported down from the Cardassian ship, moved to stand beside General Thompson. The 2 leaders, once bitter enemies, now shared a look of understanding. "We accept your invitation," Gul Dukat said, his voice firm. "On behalf of Cardassia, we are honored to join this galactic community. General Thompson nodded in agreement. And on behalf of Earth, we too accept. We look forward to the knowledge and cooperation this new era will bring. As the world watched in amazement, representatives from Earth, Cardassia, and the Zoran ship gathered around a hastily prepared table. With steady hands and resolute hearts, they signed the Trilateral Galactic Accord, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the history of all three species. Meanwhile, in a quiet room away from the commotion, Jerry and Daphne lay hand in hand, their bodies still tingling from the intense experience. They could feel the potential of their unborn children, sensing the unique blend of human, Cardassian, and Zoran DNA that flowed through their tiny forms. "Are you ready for this?" Jerry asked, his voice soft with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Daphne squeezed his hand, a smile playing on her lips. "Ready or not, my love, our adventure is just beginning." As night fell on this historic day, the IHRI facility glowed with newfound purpose. Scientists from all three species began to collaborate, sharing knowledge and technologies previously unimagined. The once controversial hybrid program had become the catalyst for an interstellar renaissance, promising a future brighter than anyone had dared to dream. And at the heart of it all, two tiny lives grew, carrying within them the hope and potential of three united species. The universe watched with suspenseful pause, waiting to see what wonders this new generation would bring.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.